This was the most exciting and dramatic time in the history of the Baha'i faith. Baha'u'lláh himself called Adrianople the land of mystery. Adrianople was a former capital of the Ottoman Empire and still an important city, but by this time it had lost its power and influence. Baha'u'lláh lived in Adrianople for nearly 5 years, until 1868. During this time, he ceaselessly proclaimed his mission to quicken the world and unite all its peoples, calling upon the kings and rulers of the earth to assist in bringing about the most great peace. The faith of God experienced great convulsions during these years. The man mainly responsible for the turmoil was Baha'u'llah's own half-brother, the jealous Mirza Yahya, who would stop at nothing to fulfill his selfish desires. But as we will witness, the faith triumphantly withstood all challenges to its tender existence, and in Edirne, the sun of the revelation of Baha'u'lláh rose all the way up to its zenith. Abdu'l-Baha, the son of Baha'u'lláh, was only 19 years old upon their arrival to Adrianople. Although just a youth, he was instrumental in assisting his father throughout these difficult times. In Adrianople, Abdu'l-Baha increasingly served as his father's shield to the outside world.
It wasn't long before the inhabitants of Adrianople perceived Baha'u'llah's greatness. He was quickly sought after for his knowledge and wisdom. He soon won the respect and admiration of the governor, of the leading religious figures, and many other dignitaries. He was so revered that people in the streets would wholeheartedly bow before him as he passed. Baha'u'lláh was 46 years old at the time.
So great is the grace vouchsafed in this day, that in a single day and night, were an amanuensis capable of accomplishing it to be found, the equivalent of the Persian bayan would be sent down from the heaven of divine holiness.
From the days of Iraq until this time, tablets have been revealed unceasingly. But now in Adrianople, this process gained more and more momentum. It was clear that a new phase had begun. Baha'u'lláh was openly declaring his station as the supreme manifestation of God.
During this period, those who were unfaithful to Baha'u'lláh rallied around Mirza Yahya, or Rizal, whose station as nominee of the Bab confused many of the believers. While most of them who met Yahya became aware that he was nothing more than a mere figurehead designed to take away the focus of attention on Baha'u'lláh, yet the controversy surrounding his position continued. Now the very jealous Mirza Yahya decided he would take leadership of the community, that the people would follow him and turn to him for spiritual enlightenment and guidance.
Sayyid Muhammad Isfahani was well aware of Mirza Yahya's weaknesses in intelligence and character. He had the ability to influence Mirza Yahya and many others to commit evil deeds against Baha'u'lláh.
Within the first 7 months of their arrival, they changed homes 4 times due to inadequate accommodation. They also lacked suitable clothing, and the year was marked by great suffering. When Baha'u'lláh and his family first arrived in Adrianople, they stayed for 3 nights in a 2-story caravanserai. A caravanserai was a kind of large inn used to accommodate travelers in the Middle East. And this particular caravanserai is from the time of Baha'u'lláh. Then they moved to a house in the Muradiya quarter. The first house Baha'u'lláh lived in was too small for 11 people and infested with vermin. So they moved to another house in the same area that was bigger. Unfortunately, neither house still exists. One of them stood just next to the mosque.
At that time, members of the Mawlawi order, or dervishes, used to meet every Friday for their services in their taqis, or centers of congregation. One of these was here, next to the Muradiya Mosque.
The members of this mystic order are also known as the whirling dervishes. During their services, they raise their arms in a certain way and spin and whirl around their master, chanting in unison. Sometimes this would last for hours. The interior of this mosque looks much like it did during the time of Bahá'u'lláh.
Martha Root, who the beloved guardian regarded as the foremost hand of the cause of God and the very model of a Baha'i travel teacher, visited Adrianople in 1933 along with Marian Jack in an attempt to trace Baha'u'llah's journey. Here's how she described this mosque. I went into the mosque. It is a beautiful interior, high and lofty, with the blue faience of various hues, from the delicate Chinese green blue of the east to the deep, rich Sevres blue of the west. It is marvelously colorful, although now it is more than 500 years old. Quotations from the Holy Quran illumined the walls. All colors were soft and harmonious. Such rich old tones are seldom seen in our modern churches. Kneeling with forehead to the rugs in this memorable mosque, I felt with a throb of wonder how far Baha'u'lláh had come to meet our Western world. Adrianople was his closest approach to our Occident, but all these thoughts dropped into subconsciousness as one bowed in silent love in his living presence. He was in that mosque. The moments there were sublime, not to be described, but experienced.
Baha'u'lláh lived 6 months in the Muradiya quarter. Then he and his family moved to the house of Amrullah. Amrullah means God's command. There was a young man in the name of Hussein Ashchi. He was at the service of the Holy Family as a cook. He left memoirs describing this period.
The house was very large and magnificent. It had a huge outer apartment where all the loved ones of Baha'u'lláh used to gather.
The means of livelihood were very inadequate and meager. Most of the time there was no food which could be served to Baha'u'lláh other than bread and cheese. Every day I used to save some meat and oil and store it in a special place until there was enough to cook. Then I would invite Baha'u'lláh to a meal on the lawn. We managed to save money and buy 2 cows and a goat. The milk and yogurt we produced were served in the holy household.
Many wonderful things happened while Baha'u'lláh was here. For example, he revealed the tablet of Ahmad in this house. This was a powerful letter to Ahmad.
Of paradise singeth upon the twigs of the tree of eternity.
Ahmad was a beloved and devoted follower of Baha'u'lláh. He received the tablet from Baha'u'lláh in Constantinople while on his way to visit the Blessed Beauty in Adrianople. The tablet made it obvious to Ahmad that Baha'u'lláh wanted him to return to Persia. and teach the followers of the Bab about Baha'u'lláh. His complete and instant obedience led him directly back to Persia, where he lived to teach the faith to the Babis until his passing.
Only 1 year after Baha'u'llah's arrival in Adrianople, Mirza Yahya made his first attempt on Baha'u'llah's life. In order to poison him, Mirza Yahya learned about the effects of various herbs and poisons. One day he invited Baha'u'llah to his home and smeared a substantial amount of poison that he had concocted around Baha'u'llah's teacup. Shortly after Baha'u'llah drank his tea from the cup, he became seriously ill. He suffered with severe pains and high fever for about a month. With great concern for his very life, the family called Dr. Shishman. After taking just one look at him, Dr. Shishman knew that his condition was hopeless. He grieved at the sight of Baha'u'llah's inevitable death and begged God to accept him as a sacrifice. Feeling he could do no more, Dr. Shishman departed without prescribing any medicine. When Baha'u'llah's personal attendant and amanuensis Mirza Agha Jan went to visit Dr. Shishman, the doctor was already gravely ill. He told Mirza Agha Jan that God was answering his prayer to take his own life instead of the life of Baha'u'llah. He was proved to be right, because in a few days Baha'u'llah was recuperating and Dr. Shishman had passed away. This attempt left Baha'u'llah with a permanently shaking hand until the end of his life. Nevertheless, for many years, Baha'u'llah protected his half-brother Mirza Yahya with a sin-covering eye, not wanting to reveal his wicked ways to the public. In a more daring way, Mirza Yahya then went on to poison the well which provided water to the Holy Family and the companions. The poison was strong enough to cause illness among them and diluted enough not to be lethal.
As if these acts weren't vile and heinous enough, Mirza Yahya continued with yet another attempt. He began to show his contempt for Baha'u'llah with even greater boldness. His next act included Salmoni the barber, a trusted attendant and loyal follower of Baha'u'llah. Salmoni describes what happened at the local bathhouse on that fateful day.
One day I went to the bath to await the arrival of the Blessed Beauty. Mirza Yahya arrived first. He spoke to me while I was attending him. He told me that the cause of God needed help. He told me 2 stories about courage, but from the tone of his remarks, I understood that he was implying that it would be an act of courage if I were to assassinate Baha'u'llah. At once I felt shattered, frightened, and enraged. I wanted to kill him, but I didn't want to offend the Blessed Beauty. I was so filled with anger, I shouted and chased him out.
Both Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha advised Salmani that he should not mention this incident to anyone. However, his rage was so overwhelming that he couldn't keep the incident to himself. Soon the news spread and caused much fear and anguish in the hearts of the believers.
After the incident in the bathhouse with Salmani, Baha'u'llah decided it was time to formally announce to Mirza Yahya his claim and his mission, even though Mirza Yahya was fully aware of the declaration of Baha'u'llah in the Garden of Rezvan before he left Baghdad. This formal announcement would leave no excuse to misinterpret the issue. Baha'u'llah revealed a tablet, the Surah Amra, Surah of Command, in which he clearly states his claim and his mission as a manifestation of God. Mirza Agha Jan delivered the tablet to Mirza Yahya, read it aloud, and demanded a reply. The defiance of Mirza Yahya rose to even greater heights.
Ertesi gün Mirza Yahya cevap vererek kendisine ilahi vahyin geldiğini ve tüm insanların Hz. Baha'u'llah'a değil kendisine inanmaları gerektiğini söyledi. Böyle bir boş ve hoşalmayan iddia karşısında Hz. Baha'u'llah ve kutsal aileleri 10 Mart 1866 tarihinde buraya Rıza Bey'in evine yerleştiler.
For 2 months, Baha'u'lláh refused to associate with either friend or stranger, including his own companions. Mirza Yahya's response signaled the open and final rupture between him and Baha'u'lláh. This caused great sorrow in Baha'u'lláh, who had raised him for much of his childhood after the death of their father.
This is known as the most great separation. Baha'u'lláh and his companions separated from Mirza Yahya and his followers. Baha'u'lláh wanted to grant complete freedom and time for those who were still confused to be able to choose between him and Mirza Yahya. Among those who followed Baha'u'lláh in the house of Reza Bey were his amanuensis, Mirza Agha Jan, the half-brother of Baha'u'lláh named Mirza Muhammad Quli, and the young cook, Agha Hussein. The rest of the companions of Baha'u'lláh were heartbroken because of this separation.
After Baha'u'lláh poisoned, he has much suffered. And believers, because believers don't go for presence of him. They want to be presence of Baha'u'lláh. Because this separation, they are sorry, they are sorrowless time. And believers in Baha'u'lláh rent a house to be near to Baha'u'lláh. And they before stay and another quarter, stay and prayer together day and night. They read from holy writings and prayer and begged God for the separation to end, for them to be near to the blessed beauty again. When their prayer answered by God, they were very joyful and happy and to be presence of Baha'u'lláh. Baha'u'lláh answered their prayer and they moved their home, their house, to be close to the Reza Bey house, and they be near to him.
Hazreti Baha'u'lláh bahçe ve sağanlıkta yürüyerek inananlarla sohbet ederlerdi. Rıza Bey'in evinde bulundukları süre zarfında nazil olan ayetlerin çokluğu karşısında Mirza Acan ve Hazreti Baha'u'llah'ın oğulları levihleri gece gündüz yazarak kopyalamakla meşgullerdi. Edirne'de inananların çoğu Hazreti Baha'u'llah'a büyük bir sadakatla bağlıydılar. Sadece çok az kişi Mirza Yahya'yı destekliyorlardı.
Today, the House of Reza Bey has been restored in conformity with its original structure, and Baha'is from all over the world pay visits to this holy spot. Pilgrims come here in a spirit of love and reverence to pray.
Yahya and his cohorts sent a petition to the governor of Adrianople filled with false statements about Baha'u'lláh. But the governor was one of Baha'u'llah's most ardent admirers, and he personally took the petition to Baha'u'lláh and shared its contents with him. The letter stated that Yahya was not receiving his share of the allowance allotted to the exiles. He had even sent one of his wives to the governor to complain that their allowance had been cut off by Baha'u'lláh and that their children were on the brink of starvation. The truth was very different. For although Yahya had tried to take Baha'u'llah's life, he ensured that Yahya received his share of the allowance, while Baha'u'lláh himself, as a result of these events, would eventually refuse to draw from it.
These accusations spread far and wide, reaching Constantinople. There they became the subject of agitated discussion and speculation in high circles which had previously regarded Baha'u'lláh with considerable esteem. The prestige of the faith was damaged, and the most great separation had certainly become public.
Eventually, Baha'u'lláh moved to the house of Izzeta. It is in the same area as the house of Rizabik.
It was a large house with spacious rooms. Baha'u'lláh remained here with his family till the end of his stay in Adrianople. Today this vast orchard is vibrant with spring colors. Beautiful plants and trees adorn the courtyard. This property is kept up and cared for by custodians and gardeners. From here there was an inspirational view of the river and the southern orchards of the city.
There were so many problems and so much confusion between Baha'u'lláh and Yahya that some of the believers needed clarification. Mir Muhammadi Mukhari, a Babi of Shiraz, helped a lot in this clarification.
I was confused by the differences that had arisen, so I traveled from Persia to Adrianople to investigate the truth for myself. I heard there that Mirza Yahya had told a few Muslims that he was ready to confront Baha'u'lláh in public. Foolishly, he and his supporters were sure that Baha'u'lláh would not respond to the challenge. On the other hand, Baha'u'lláh had told me that if ever Mirza Yahya would come face to face with him, then I could consider Yahya's claims to be true. So I decided to personally invite Baha'u'lláh to a confrontation. Mirza Yahya appointed the Mosque of Sultan Selim as the place for the encounter. This was in September 1867.
This mosque was built in the 16th century and is considered to be the most magnificent mosque in all of Turkey. It was built by Sinan, the great Turkish architect. It is said that both Sultan Selim and his Grand Vizier dreamed in the same night that the Prophet Muhammad came to them and told them to build this mosque. Immediately, the Sultan instructed the architect Sinan, who was 80 years old at the time, to build the mosque. The mosque of Sultan Selim was a masterpiece.
The news and date of the confrontation between Baha'u'lláh and Yahya became known among the Muslims, Christians, and Jews of the city.
A large multitude thronged the area between the house of Amrullah and the entrance to the mosque. As Baha'u'lláh passed through the crowd, people showed great reverence, greeting him and opening the way for him to pass. Many of them prostrated themselves at his feet and kissed them. Baha'u'lláh greeted the crowd by raising his hands and expressing his good wishes. Again, Mir Muhammad Mukhari is an eyewitness.
I had the honor of accompanying the Blessed Beauty. As he walked through the streets and markets, he uttered verses in a voice and manner that astonished those who witnessed him.
O Muhammad, he who is the Spirit hath verily issued forth from his habitation, and with him have come forth the souls of God's chosen ones and the realities of his messengers. Behold then the dwellers of the realms on high above mine head, and all the testimonies of the prophets in my grasp. They were all the divines, all the wise men, all the kings and rulers on earth to gather together, I, in very truth, would confront them, and would proclaim the verses of God, the Sovereign, the Almighty, the All-Wise.
When Baha'u'lláh entered this mosque, the preacher who was delivering the Friday sermon forgot his words and became speechless in